All right. We're going to get into it pretty quickly today. But before we get into the podcast, this is another live recording of the Elite Development Podcast. Before we get into it, I just wanted to express my sincerest gratitude for everybody that was part of the PT Domination All Access event this past weekend. That's where I've been since Wednesday last week. That's also why, if you're noticing that my voice doesn't quite sound right, there was a lot of shouting, a lot of laughing, a lot of crying, a lot of real stuff going on over this past weekend. So everybody that was involved in that event, I cannot possibly express enough gratitude for all of you guys. And that's actually going to lead us into the topic of the podcast today, which is standards. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because one of the things this event opened my eyes to, one of the things that I really started understanding after being with a group of such amazing people for the entire weekend, was that even though I'm a hard worker, even though I know that I can grind with the best of them, I can, get up, do the early mornings, do the late nights, do all of the in between, my standards haven't been high enough. I've talked a lot on this show about wanting to impact millions of athletes around the world, wanting to impact coaches, wanting to leave lasting change on this industry. And if that's truly what I want to do, there's a next level for me to achieve. And this weekend really opened my eyes to that. So we are going to get into the show here talking about standards in 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the show designed to help athletes gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. Today, we are going to be talking about standards. Today, we are going to be talking about standards because so many of us, even if we work hard, even if we grind, even if we think we're the hardest worker in the room, don't have the standards we need to achieve the goals we want. And so the reason that this topic came to mind today is because this past weekend I was at the PT Domination All Access event, my business coaching program that I'm in, through an event in Kelowna, BC. And I got the privilege to be there, not only spend the weekend with a group of absolutely incredible individuals, a group of millionaires that are helping me build my business to the next level, helping me deliver to my clients to the next level. But I also got to watch something pretty special. I got to watch 7-time Mr. Olympia champion Phil Heath speak on the mindset of a champion. And for those of you who don't know who Phil Heath is or what Mr. Olympia is, it's basically the world stage of bodybuilding. So Phil Heath is famous for 7 times in a row being the biggest, most sculpted man on the planet. And immediately you might say, well, steroids, yes. And he doesn't deny that. Nobody denies it. But steroids don't make a bodybuilder. You can't just take steroids and magically look that way on the right day at the right time, all of that. The work ethic that goes into not only being able to step on that stage one time, not only to be able to win one time, but to win 7 times, to be the best in the world at something 7 years in a row, is something to be admired. And that's what I got to listen to him speak about on the weekend. And I feel absolutely blessed for that. But that is what brought up the topic that we are going to be speaking about today, which is standards. Now, when Phil was talking, he spoke about how in his career, very, very early on, he declared he was going to win 10 Mr. Olympia championships. He wasn't going to be the guy that stepped on the Mr. Olympia stage. He wasn't going to be the guy that won 1. He was going to be the guy that won 10 Mr. Olympia championships. And getting to listen to him speak about that was incredible, because a goal of being the best in the world at something for 10 years in a row would be absolutely phenomenal, absolutely amazing to be able to achieve. And he talked about how in the early days of that career, he went through a lot of adversity, but it was the standard of being the 10-time Mr. Olympia champion that kept him moving through it. So, I won't go into exact specifics of the event with him, but going into one of the shows, he had someone very close to him pass away. And now this would obviously be enough for a lot of people to not compete, this would be enough for a lot of people to show up half-assed, to get off of their training schedule, off of their program, off of their regimen. But what carried him through was he had the mindset of, I am the 10-time Mr. Olympia champion, even though at that point he hadn't won it at all. And that was something that really spoke to me, that, no matter what he was going through, he had someone close to him pass away, and he continued on the path that he needed to continue on to achieve his goal. Going into another one, he had an extremely bad injury that would take most people out of the competition entirely. And he was able to continue on, push through, win again, and take a step closer to achieving his goal. Time after time after time, this man faced horrible, horrible traumas coming into competition. But he had that standard so locked in his mind that I am Phil Heath, 10-time Mr. Olympia champion, that it kept him going through every single time. It kept him pushing through every single time. There was nothing that anyone could do that would stop him. And the reason why I found this so powerful is because I think a lot of us feel, and I know I've been guilty of this in the past, a lot of us feel like we're really hard workers. We're the ones who will do a lot. We'll go further than the next person. We're willing to do what it takes. We're willing to go the extra mile. We're willing to do this, do that, do this, until it gets hard. I know I've spoken to many athletes that tell me they have goals of conquering the world in their sport. They have goals of being the best. They want to, make millions of dollars in their sport. They want to win world championships. They want to play at the top level, but then they're skipping training sessions. But then they're going out on the weekend, spending their weekends, drinking, doing drugs, doing all of these things that are detracting away from that goal. And if I speak to them about it, their response is, well, it was just one weekend. It doesn't matter. And yeah, that one weekend might not matter, but how many times are you having that one weekend that doesn't matter? Because if you truly want to be the best at something, the truth is you need to be that person now. So how do we go about doing that? Well, the first way we go about becoming the person we need to become to achieve the goals we have is break that person down. Break that person down. For Phil Heath, 7-time Mr. Olympia champion, early in his career, he understood that if he was going to win this championship 10 times, he could not miss. He could not miss a training session. He could not miss a meal. He could not get off track. That was not something that he could allow himself to do if he wanted to achieve that goal. So he didn't. And when he talked about the secret to his success, that was it. There was no fancy training regimen. There was no, crash diet. There was no anything. The secret to him being the best in the world for 7 years in a row, something that had never been done before, was just not missing. Showing up when he didn't want to. Giving 100% effort when he didn't want to. Getting the meals in when he felt full and didn't want to get the meals in. Studying his competitors to understand where they were weak and what he could capitalize on to beat them. This was the secret to his success. And this is something that I think so many of us are missing. This is something that I know I've missed in the past. I get onto that grind. I get onto that grind when I'm feeling good. And, I'm working long days. I'm progressing. I'm making more money. I'm serving clients at a higher level. I'm seeing my athletes see more success. And then something gets hard. And then, I have a fight with a close friend or a parent or, whoever it is, and that throws me off. Or I have someone tell me something, that gets in my head and it throws me off. Or I have a client drop off and then that hits me in the heart and that hurts and then that throws me off. And I think it's easy to hold ourselves to the standards when it's easy. It's easy to hold ourselves to high standards, hold ourselves to the standards we need to achieve the goals we have when everything in life is fine. But what I want you to do right now is ask yourself, do you hold yourself to the same standards when life isn't fine? Do you hold yourself to the same standards when things are going wrong? If you receive bad news, are you going to show up the next day and do the work anyways? Because this is where I think so many of us are missing. And this is such a critical element in being able to be the best at something. This is such a critical element in being able to really reach the top level that so many of you want to reach. And so I ask you to ask yourself and be honest with yourself, because there's only one way that you improve. The way that you improve is you truly look deep inside yourself to understand whether or not you do this. Do you hold yourself to the same standards that you talk about when things are good? Do you hold yourself to those same standards when things are bad? Because if you don't, that's your unlock. If you don't hold yourself to the same standards when things are bad as you do when things are good, that's your unlock. That's your next level. Because the people who truly achieve at the highest level, the people who truly achieve the goals that they set for themselves, are the ones that show up. They're the ones that show up when things aren't good. They're the ones that show up when they don't want to show up. They're the ones that show up even when they get 3 hours of sleep the night before. They're the ones that show up even when they receive bad news in their personal life. So if you want to be a champion, that's it. Show up. And so that was something that hit me really hard, because I know, as I've mentioned already, that's something that I've struggled with in my life. I've struggled with showing up even when I don't feel good. But you might be asking yourself now, well, like, what do you mean? I'm not allowed to give myself a break. I'm not allowed to, be sad if something bad happens. It's like, no, you're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to feel feelings. You should feel those feelings. You should better understand those feelings, and you can use them. But what happens to a lot of people is they let those feelings break them. What used to happen to me is, if a client dropped off, that would mess me up for a week. I'd be anxious. I'd feel shitty. I'd feel like I wasn't a good coach, and that would mess me up for a week. Whereas what I learned through this speech from Phil Heath was, if that happens, if that client drops off, if that bad month happens for you in your business, if that bad practice happens for you as an athlete, if you have a bad training session, if you're having one of those weeks where things just don't feel like they're working, feel that, be upset, but then show up the next day ready to correct it. Show up the next day with a better attitude for it. Show up the next day ready to make a difference, ready to actually reach the next level. Because so many of us show up the next day with that mentality of, oh, I fucking suck at this. And then guess what? When you put that energy out there, of course you're going to suck at it, because you're telling yourself you're bad. And if you're telling yourself you're bad, you're going to keep being bad. But if you're telling yourself, this was an off day, let's get back to it tomorrow and let's get better, now you're going to show up with a better mindset. You show up with a better mindset. That means you're going to show up ready to improve. You're going to show up ready to hit the next level. So that was a nice quick one today. I hope you guys learned a little bit from that as well. I know that I did. I know that I have made a commitment to myself that I am not going to miss anymore. You guys are going to see me here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You guys are going to see podcasts coming out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And everything that I know I need to be doing is going to be getting done. And so for yourself, I ask you to make that same commitment. All the athletes out there listening to this, sitting there going, maybe I don't have what it takes to reach the next level. Oh, maybe I'm, just not good enough. Oh, maybe, and those thoughts start to push through your head. Make the commitment. Make the commitment that you're done being the athlete that isn't going to stay where they're at. Make the commitment you're done being the person that's going to stay where they're at. And how we do this, how I want you to do this for yourself as well, is gain clarity on that goal. Gain clarity on that goal, where you want your career to take you. And I'm not just saying, what you want to achieve. I'm saying when you want to achieve it, how you want to achieve it, and depending on the sport, what team you want to play for, what organization you want to fight for, everything involved in that goal. What does your personal life look like? What does your professional life look like outside of the sport? Are you doing speaking opportunities? Do you have sponsorships? How many sponsorships do you have? What sponsorships are they? And then ask yourself, in order to be that person, in order to be at the end of the road, in order to be the person who has achieved every single one of these goals that you've laid out for yourself, the person who has achieved the vision that you've laid out for yourself, ask yourself, who do you need to show up as every day? Who do you need to be in order to actually achieve those goals? And then when you ask yourself who you need to be to achieve those goals, and I'm talking again, right? Do you need to be the person who's showing up earlier? Do you need to be the person who's working harder? Do you need to be the person who has their nutrition more dialed in, their training more dialed in, their mindset more dialed in? Where is it that you fall short right now from being the person you need to be to achieve the vision that you have set out for yourself? And the more clear you can be both on the vision on one side, but the more clear you can be on who you are now and where you fall short, the better you can set up that path, the better you can create the path that you need in order to achieve the vision you have set out for yourself. Okay, so my challenge to you is, who do you need to be to achieve the vision you have for your career? Where are the gaps between where you're at now and that person that you do need to be? And what is one step you can take this week in order to start moving along that path? So that is it. That is all. I appreciate you all for taking the time to tune in live. I know we had a few people that were on the broadcast this time. If you're tuning in on the replay, on the podcast, on the YouTube channel, wherever it is, make sure you're subscribing to the podcast, you're subscribing to the YouTube channel, and you're following me on social media. All the notes on how to do that are going to be in the show notes below. And I appreciate you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to speaking to you all again very soon.